Thinking and acting like a champion. We're going to continue that theme with the use of strategic analytics. We're going to talk about 4 practical ways analytics can help your credit union. So as I said, I've been in analytics a long time. First as an analyst and then as a leader. And it really, analytics informs quite strongly that 8 pillars of strategic alignment that we talked about. If you think about strategy, member needs, member experience, focused execution, measurement, metrics, and innovation, analytics is involved in all of that. So that needs to be the information, the fuel, if you will, that feeds the decision making, the employee actions, overhauling processes, and systems building. So it's very, very critical. Now, a lot of people think that analytics is just some kind of new thing, and they call it big data. Well, big data is just a different term for what analytics has been for 30 or 40 years. It's been around a very, very long time. And as we said in the last presentation, there's been a slowness among financial institutions, both banks and credit unions, in adopting it. Well, where I live, in Fayetteville, Arkansas, not too far away from me, there's this little company named Walmart. And you may have heard of them. And their headquarters is just right there, right close to me. And what's growing up around Walmart is what we call a vendor community. So Johnson & Johnson, Procter & Gamble, Oracle, all the main companies that sell to Walmart, Walmart requires their vendors to have a physical presence in Northwest Arkansas. And in that retail community, that industry, analytics is used. They live and breathe analytics. But for some reason, banks and credit unions, particularly community banks and credit unions, have been slow to adopt it. Well, I want to demystify it for you and show you how you can use it at your credit union. And we're not going to talk about statistics and quantitative analysis and all the things that, all the technical aspects of it. We're going to talk about the management aspects of analytics. So here is our agenda. Analytics is about people. We're going to talk about that. And we're going to look at 2 forward-thinking credit union CEOs who are doing a great job on analytics. Some real-world examples. The C-suite's role, very, very important. Successes and failures, how can you succeed? And then a case study. And as always, remember the saying by John Maxwell, everything rises and falls on leadership. So analytics is a system that we talked about in the last presentation, but it requires leadership, and it's primarily about leadership. It will fail if you just approach it as kind of a functional, technical area. So it's about people. And what we're doing is using analytics to tell stories about people, to get information about your members, information about your marketplace, information about your performance, and put it together and tell stories about people. So you're using numbers, data to tell stories. So what we want to do is understand the needs and goals of your members so you can help them achieve them. We talked about that in the 8 pillars of strategic alignment, okay? And we want to understand our markets and communities so you know who needs to be helped and how. So if you just think about analytics as a way to help your members, to be more effective with your members and help them succeed, that's where you need to start. It doesn't have to be this secret, this high-flying, heavy-duty, high-tech thing that you need to think about. Think about it as understanding people. So, for example, we want to tell stories about this woman. Tell me about this woman right there. How old do you think she is? Just guessing. Okay, 30s, I heard. What does she do? She runs a small business, doesn't she? You think it's a startup, or has she been in business a while? Pretty fresh. Okay, good. Could she be at all related to these people down here? Could be, right? Because these people might be the mom and dad who started the business, right? And maybe they're now retired and she is the managing partner. Maybe she now owns it. Or maybe it's a startup. We don't know. But our data will tell us. How about these folks? What do you think some of their needs are? Pardon me? Education. They have young children, right? How about, what about their income? 2-income family? 1 income? Our data will tell us. If it's probably 2, our data will tell us, won't it? Particularly if we have their automatic deposits from their employers, right? Data tells us those kind of things. So if we knew it about 1 family, couldn't we know it about 5,000 families if we had the information in the right place? And that would tell us something, right? Hey, there are 5,000 families with children between the in middle school with dual income. What can we do for them? How can we find out more about them? What stories can the data tell us? What questions can we start asking? How can we get more information about that, what they want to achieve in life? That's what analytics is all about. So I want to talk to you about 2, what I consider to be very forward-thinking credit union CEOs who use data very, very well. One is Joe Newberry, whom I mentioned in the last presentation, Redstone Federal Credit Union in Huntsville, Alabama. The other is Doug Fecker from Wright Pat Credit Union in Dayton, Ohio. And Joe here has done something that he calls life events. And here's an example of what he means. He's created 14 life events at his credit union, and a database that keeps track of those life events. So a life event could be getting married, having a baby, getting out of the military, getting out of college, retiring, any of a number of life events. So one in particular that he told me about is weddings. So he's gone out and he has formed alliances with wedding planners, with wedding photographers. And he's told his members that he knows are in the process of getting married, hey, if you're going to get married, you go to this particular merchant in town, you use your Redstone Federal Credit Union debit card, and you'll get a discount. You should see his fee income. It's unbelievable. I couldn't believe it when I looked at his P&L and saw his fee income. And he said, this is one way that we do it. We study member life events. We get together merchants who can help our members meet those needs, and we partner with them. So he's done that very, very well. Produced a lot of income. Then Doug here has done something which I think is very unique. And he is focusing on what he calls member health. So there are basically 3 categories of member health that he likes to talk about. Thriving, coping, and vulnerable. And he has what I would call segmented his members based on those needs. And now he's in the process of developing products to meet each of the kinds of needs associated with those areas of financial health. And he's getting his employees involved in terms of helping them understand what is the profile of somebody who's vulnerable. And there's a great movie. The name escapes me right now, but it's a movie. If you email me, you need to watch this movie. It's about some of these vulnerable people who are falling through the cracks in our financial services system. It's on the tip of my tongue. Sorry about that, but I'll get it to you if you email it to me. The Spent movie. The Spent, S-P-E-N-T movie. Look at that. You'll find it on YouTube. You'll find it very, very compelling. And the people who are vulnerable aren't necessarily those who would first come to mind. But anyway, he's organized his members around financial health. And accordingly, products and services, ways to approach these kinds of members. Really, really interesting. So I'll give you several practical examples of analytics. So a bank that I worked for, I was the analytics manager. And we had a problem. We had about 260 branches, and we didn't have any customers coming into them. That's a big problem. And so I said, how can we solve this? And I said, well, could our employees make outbound phone calls to customers? And of course there was, we could never call customers. That'd be horrible. They would think we're telemarketers. They would hate us. We'd see a lot of attrition. It'd be awful. Well, with the backing of the CEO, we were able to do that. And over time, remember, it was a process, and you have to lead through change and lead through obstacles, lead through resistance. But over time, we were able to make more than 300,000 calls to customers every year from 260 some odd branches in 4 states. Why? Because we had a system that we developed that mined our data every day according to our customer needs, shipped it out electronically to the appropriate branch, put it on each employee's desktop, gave them assigned customers to call, taught them how to talk to customers in a way that was non-threatening, but thanked them for their business. We were hugely successful that way. Now, was there resistance? Sure. Did people say, hey, I wasn't hired to do that? Yeah, they did. But over time, the metrics of the jobs changed, like I talked about in the last presentation. We started incentivizing and hiring based on what was really important, based on customer contact. And analytics was the system that fueled that. Next, I've got a client right now who is looking at profit groups. So you saw this graph in the previous presentation. What we're doing is looking at high-value customers here and high potential. And we're looking at what characteristics of the high value do these people in high potential have. In other words, who is a good candidate to go from high potential to high value, and how can we get them there? So what we found is that we could increase mortgages by $41 million. We found that mortgages was the one product that people who look like high potential, high value, but were down here, we found mortgage was what they didn't have with us. That exists in your credit union's database right now. And so the point is, when you're thinking about a system, an analytics system, a way of using analytics, what you're doing is this thing that we call member portfolio management. So we're not going to just do a one-time campaign here. We're going to keep trying to figure out how can we stay in touch and build relationships with these high potential folks and try to keep them at least there and try to migrate them upward as much as possible. So it's not just a one-time campaign. It's an ongoing way of thinking, an ongoing part of our strategy. Next is saving high-profit members. So this is an executive dashboard of a system that my partners and I created. And any system, any analytics system that you purchase at your credit union, technology system, it should have an executive dashboard that people at your level should be able to understand and build strategy from. It shouldn't be a bunch of reports or a bunch of mumbo jumbo that you can't understand. It needs to be something that is visual and just jumps out at you. So what we have here is something that's a little bit scary. we have what we call, you can't see it too well on the slide, but we've got end zone, red zone, mass market, and lower tier in terms of profitability. And we call this member portfolio management. So we're trying to manage members in terms of how profitable they are. Not in terms of their value as human beings or their needs, their financial needs, but rather who's helping us keep the lights on at our credit union so that we can continue to operate and serve our communities. So here we found that in the end zone, about a third of our most profitable members only have one or two services with us. They basically have a mortgage, and that's it. We haven't cross-sold them into our other accounts. Either our process is defective or they didn't see the value in switching the rest of their relationship to us. It was too hard. They were too entrenched in some other bank. We didn't get their account. So consequently, when the loan pays off, when it gets refinanced, whatever happens, those members are gone, and with it, our profitability. So we've got to have something that has a two-pronged approach. One, which intervenes right now, identifies and intervenes with those members and tries to cross-sell them. And we know specifically who we want to cross-sell. This isn't just a general marketing campaign. This is very, very focused. And we want to build relationships with these people. So that's one aspect of it. But the other is, what process do we have or not have that's allowing this to occur in the first place? And that's something that we have to go back and fix. So a fourth practical example is improving lender performance. This comes from a system we designed for a client that is in Iowa. And they said to us, we're not getting the pull-through rates on our mortgages that we would like. Can you help us? We don't know why it's occurring. So we built something that looks at every step of their process, from application to pre-approvals, underwriting, processing, closing, the whole thing. And we looked at it by lender, etc., by product. And one of the things that we found out is that of the mortgages that are either pre-approved, of all their mortgages that are approved, 25% of them don't get that mortgage with that client. They go somewhere else. Well, if you're talking about increasing your pull-through rates, now we have to understand, we're using analytics to understand, why aren't they booking that loan with you? Is your process too slow? Is somebody else giving them a better rate? Are you getting, what's happening? Is somebody easier to do business with? Those are all the questions that you can start asking and finding answers to once you start looking at these numbers and saying, I don't like that. Maybe that's a problem for us. So then this system is also used as to evaluate lenders against each other and see how well they perform in each area of the loan process. So we create scorecards from it. So what we're doing here, if you think back to the 8 pillars of strategic alignment, this is the focused execution part right here. What we're doing is we're saying, okay, we need greater pull-through rates. And that's the big picture. And then strategically, we're trying to think about how we can get those, what are some trends that are or are not going right for us. And then we're going down to the individual performer level and seeing where in particular might we have some issues, but also where are some star performers and how can we make best practices out of what they do and communicate those to everybody else. So here's a bonus example. I told you that there were 4 practical ways. Well, here's a 5th. So here's a client here that wanted to increase small business lending. Who in here does small business lending? Nice. Anybody not do small business lending? Let me tell you, this is one of the greatest areas of opportunity for credit unions right now. Small business owners, like me, are very needy. We have lots of needs, accountants, lawyers, websites, lead generation, not just financial services. It goes on and on and on. But this particular client wanted to know, how can we increase small business lending? So what we did, using analytics, was we took their branch system and we said, okay, what areas of Atlanta, metro Atlanta, what geographies have high propensities for small business lending? We have that data available to us. And then what branches are associated with those geographies? And then we say, okay, now we know what branches we've got to really build small lending teams into. And we can take our small business lenders and assign them to various branches. And we can also merchandise our branches and train our employees accordingly for the need, how to talk to small businesses about lending. Really practical ways to use analytics. The ways analytics can help are endless. Asset liability management, loan risk, new member growth, strategic planning, which y'all are probably involved in, budgeting, all kinds of things. Channel analysis can make you a lot smarter. And we talk about velocity, all this information and the insights that you glean from it, from analytics, is going to make your goals, more precise, going to inform your employees more clearly, and you're going to be able to proceed at a faster rate. So what does the CEO have to do with analytics? Well, this is my former boss. His name is Jim Walton from Walmart, from the Walmart family. He was a great proponent of analytics. He went out and he found me. I was living in Virginia. He brought me to Arkansas, and he didn't know the various techniques about analytics, and he didn't need to. All he needed to know was it worked, and he believed in it, and he wanted to hire somebody who knew what they were doing to take his company forward using analytics. And so there were a couple times during my career with him where I said, now Jim, tell me what your priorities are really. And he said, I want you to make the frontline sales force more effective. Okay, I'll do that. So I asked him probably 5 years later, I said, Jim, a couple years ago you told me you wanted me to make the frontline sales force more effective. Is that still what you want me to do? Yep, you're good. So those were my marching orders, right? And the thing that he did, so he gave me direction and some vision, gave me a budget. He removed obstacles. There were different times when I would introduce something new and I would meet resistance. And so one time I was in a meeting, I introduced this calling program. And I was evaluating different banks' performance against each other. We had 16 banks. And one manager said, I don't really like this evaluation. You know, this is not part of my strategy. I don't like it. Jim looked up in the meeting and he said, well, I like it. I think you should keep doing it, Scott. So he removed that obstacle for me. That's what CEOs can do. He was also a chief advocate, right? He generated enthusiasm and he held people accountable. So he would go around to different branches with his yellow legal pad, and he would get ideas and he would get feedback on how people were using our analytics system. And then he would bring it back to me, both the good and the bad. That was wonderful. And what I put in here was he was really a chief customer advocate. I say the chief member advocate for credit union CEOs. And what does that mean? It means that you as the CEO have to really, really care about your members and be willing to care enough to invest the time to fully understand them. And fully understanding them and serving them means using analytics to break them apart into different components like we saw on the first page, those different people, and start thinking about what they need. If you start, or like Doug Fecker did, or Joe Newberry, they started with people first, and then that permeated throughout their credit union. So you know this guy, right? This is Paul Trilko at Amplify Federal Credit Union. And I met Paul at a CUNA meeting in Denver last year. And we were in an analytics presentation. I wasn't presenting. But Paul went up to the podium afterwards with the microphone, and he said, hey, I have a question. Where does analytics fit organizationally in terms of the organization? Who does it report to? Where do I put it if I wanted to? And I said, that's a guy I need to talk to afterwards. And so we formed a friendship, and it got me thinking about it as well. It fits best with the chief operating officer or the CFO. It doesn't fit as well in retail or IT or marketing. Now that's where it sits in a lot of companies, but what happens is it can tend to get siloed and not used as strategically as it could be. It's not something that is not overcomable if it's in IT or retail or marketing, but it really is very strategic, and the strategic thinkers tend to be in the C-suite. So what are some reasons for success and failure in analytics? And I've heard all these. And so you as executive managers and as board members, you can go back and talk on your board about analytics. And I've given you all of the answers to the objections. It needs to be business-led. IT cannot lead this endeavor. The CEO's got to be engaged, but it's got to come from the line of business. Whenever I meet with a CIO, I say, I'm glad you're interested. Who's the business sponsor? You've got to have widespread use as opposed to few users. So you've got to go into this thinking about, I want everybody in my organization using this. Not that they all have to be analytical or analysts or heavy-duty technical, but I want member information to be disseminated broadly across the organization so everybody gets good at using it. So you need somebody leading analytics who is a strategic leader as opposed to a low-level analyst. I see this oftentimes. There'll be somebody using what's called an MCIF, one person, and sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not very good at it, sometimes it's only part of their job, and then that person, either for the not very good, not very effective, is not their full job, then they don't utilize the system to its effectiveness, to its full extent. Other times they get really good at it and then they leave. Somebody else hires them away, and then your analytics program falls backwards. Well, as I said in the first presentation, 80% of bank executives resist this. Bank and credit union, financial services executives resist analytics. Well, this is my opinion, right? If you ignore it, you're toast. Really, in the long run. Blockbuster missed a lot of trends, and look what happened to them. Look at the how many credit unions we used to have compared to how many we have now. How many will there be in the future? It's diminishing. So if you want to thrive, not just survive, but thrive, I think the winners are those who know the most about their members, and you get that from analytics, and then you deliver on those member wants and give them the experience that they're looking for. That's all fueled by analytics. So some objections. We can't get anyone to use our CRM. I hear that all the time. We have a CRM, no one's using it. We're not adopting it. Well, that's not the employee's fault. That's a leadership issue. I hate to break it to you. It is. We tried it and it didn't work. This was painful to me. Scott, I like what you're talking about, but many people are retiring in 5 years, and I'm not going to be able to get buy-in to what you're doing. Ow. What do you plan to do in the next 5 years? Will you still be here? This is just overthinking things. No, it's serving your members better. Well, we don't have the talent for it. Don't have it in our marketplace. Too expensive. Well, you can outsource it. That's a great option. You can get somebody, me or other people around the country at a fraction of the price that you would pay to hire an employee. So Here's a simple analytics framework. We just want to look at, we get insights, whether it's from the market, whether it's from members, whether it's from transactions, whether it's from product sales, whatever it is. We build strategies, and then we execute. And then we keep doing it and doing it and doing it. And this, once again, corresponds back to that 8 pillars of strategic alignment, because we're executing, focused execution, measuring, and innovating each time. We're learning how members respond to us, how markets respond to us under different conditions. So how do you succeed? You don't try to eat the elephant all at once. You start with some very simple goals. Don't overreach. Choose your partners well, because you're going to need external partners. I always had them. I still have them. And then you've got to learn to adopt and grow through the pain, because there will be pain. So plan your objectives and don't overreach. Start with simple cross-sells. Okay, thinking about member relationships, and then create financial goals. So what do you want analytics to do for you in terms of boosting your income? What will be a good return on investment? Is it 5% growth in income above your run rate? Is it 10% growth in deposits? Is it 15% growth in assets over time? What do you want it to do for you? Set clear goals, okay? And then you're going to have to understand process and cultural changes. So in that example that I gave of the mortgage company, where we're looking at the whole application and underwriting process, there are going to be some changes there to those processes. And those employees are going to have to, over time, absorb those changes. And so the leadership has to hold them accountable, but be understanding at the same time and supportive. Choose your partners. This is very important because you need partners. When I managed analytics in my banking career, I had generally small teams of people, but my strategic partners, my vendors, I considered them part of my team. And I interviewed them and hired them the same way I was going to hire team members. And they had expertise that I couldn't hire internally. It was too expensive. Expertise like statistical modeling, what's called geographic information systems, direct marketing, and on and on. That kind of expertise that's just too expensive to bring internally. And I say this somewhat tongue-in-cheek. Do they even know what loans and deposits are? See, some of these partners are just software companies, and they're selling to all kinds of different industries, and they don't necessarily know the financial services industry very well. And so they can bring you good technology, really good technology, but can they give you the support to use it strategically and effectively to serve your members well? And are they a good fit with your culture? Are they accessible? Can they help you at a moment's notice? Adopting and growing. So I say here, create goals around member profit groups. And I like to start with profit groups. Now, Doug Fecker, he started with member financial health, and that's okay. But what I would suggest to him is that first look at profit groups, because you've got to keep your most profitable members happy, because those profits then enable you to support and subsidize, so to speak, and serve well the less profitable members. You've got to do that. So to me, those profit groups come first. Then we can start dissecting into financial health. So you might look at a crosstab that across the, if you're thinking about an Excel spreadsheet, down the side here might be profit groups. And across the top, you have a matrix that looks at the financial health, thriving, coping, vulnerable. And you find out how many you've got in each segment, and you start studying them and make decisions. So there's something called appended data. And what that lets you do is you can have a company like Axiom, which is in Little Rock, and they take data that they have in their database on people, mostly census data, but also all kinds of very rich data, number of number of children, presence of children, commuting time, all kinds of great data, financial health data, and they append it, they intersect it, they attach it to your members, and it gives you greater insights. So that's something that is very helpful. And then it helps you plan your budget. So once you have, because you're in budgeting season right now, in strategic planning, once you know profitability, who buys what products, and who you should be targeting, and how you should reach them, and how you should be messaging to them, then you can plan your budget around what your expectations are in terms of new member and new account acquisition. So what do you do next? If your CEO is a believer, create a team and a budget and decide who owns it internally. Are you going to hire somebody? Does the COO own it? Does the CFO own it? In a lot of credit unions, the CFO owns it. So you create a team, help them develop a plan, non-technical. You should have phases. You add the all account data first, bring in your transactions. If you've got profitability, bring it in or create it or approximate it if you don't. You can't do everything at one time. Remember, don't try to bite this off all at once. Find a versatile technology and business partner and then lead through the pain. And tie metrics to bonuses. Metrics to bonuses and incentive plans. We're winding down. Here's a case study. We're going to take you through from high level down to execution and show you how this works. So we're looking at an executive dashboard. And I said before that we had too many at-risk end zone members. That means that there are very profitable members who only have one or two services with us. So they're at a high risk of attrition. That's bad. They leave, our profitability goes way down. So let's take a deeper look at them. And what we find, we split those end zone, that top profitability category, into three more categories. I call it end zone 1, 2, and 3. End zone 1 being top 1 or 2%, and then next 3 to 5, 6 to 10%. So three categories. And you can do it any way you want. I'm just showing that you can break it down. And what we find is a problem. We find end zone 1 has 7 services with us. That's awesome. But end zone 2 and 3 are very under cross-sold. So we know we've got an issue with that part of our end zone group. So we've isolated particular people. And so we know that when people migrate from end zone to a lower profit group, like the next one down, it cost us $4.3 million in lost profitability. That hurts. So that's what's just naturally occurring right now. So how can we get ahead of that? If we're doing some budgeting, strategic planning, we know that this is something that's sucking money out of our bottom line. So we look at those appended demographics that I mentioned, and we find that there really are three people types. There's the real affluent, there's the career-oriented, these two, and then there are folks that are just starting out. So we really have three different groups of people. We can't treat and message everybody all the same. They don't all want the same products. They don't all want the same experience. Remember that the 8 pillars, looking at member experience. We've got probably what are some retirees or some very high income earners in their 50s and 60s in the affluent. We've got some millennials in the other profit groups. So we can't do one size fits all in our messaging and in our branding. So this helps us be smart in terms of what people to approach and how to approach them in terms of stopping that risk of attrition. So what now we do is we find the exact people that we're looking for. So there are almost 1,800 of these folks. So we know that during the course of the year, we've got to build relationships with these people and solidify those profitable relationships. We know exactly who we need to speak with and build relationships with And moreover, we know that there's a particular branch that's very key to our end zone member retention. They're doing a great job selling mortgages, but something is broken at that branch in their process in terms of onboarding and cross-selling new members. We need to figure out what that is and how to fix it. While we're looking at that branch, you can do this for every branch. We can assess what the market opportunity is for every single one of our branches. We know how profitable various kinds of folks are. We know if we increase market share by 1% in any one group of people, how much our profits will go up. And we know how many accounts that we need to make that happen. So are you getting the picture here? We've gone from board member, where we're saying at the executive committee and board level, hey, that's something that somebody needs to work on. And now we've pushed it all the way down to the exact members and the exact branches that we know we want to improve in. This is how powerful it is. So here's how we want to sum this up. We started to identify our most profitable members, segments, traits, needs, goals, etc. You seeing how this fits into our 8 pillars of strategic alignment in terms of member needs and experience? We came up with something very specific: reduce end zone migration and its financial impact by 15%. Clear direction from leadership. Develop relationship management plan with marketing, branches, finance, especially at Sandy Springs. And understand our checking account opportunities. Is there something wrong with our checking account that these folks are not getting it? What's going on? Why aren't they getting our additional checking accounts and deposit products? So is it valuable to them? Why are we missing so many? Set goals for improvement. What's the checking account opening process with new mortgage life? Now, what's missing? And we want to generate word-of-mouth referrals at Sandy Springs. So, discussion and takeaways. How would you present this to your board? What size budget can you afford? And what kind of management and employee objections do you think? So what we've learned today is that analytics fits into acting like a champion. Analytics fits into the first presentation of the High Velocity Credit Union. It informs a lot of those circles in the 8 pillars of strategic alignment. It's not just cross-selling. It affects everything that you do. It's telling stories about people, meaningful stories about your members so that you can help them achieve their financial goals. So I thank you for listening to this presentation on analytics. I hope you all have safe travels home.